All right. We are live once again. Hunter Feast Week. It's behind us. It's a glorious week from a basketball watching perspective, from a betting perspective. Also, it's Feast Week, which means it's Thanksgiving. We also had some college football. Stressful weekend. As a Husky fan, how was your Thanksgiving? How was your Feast Week? How are you doing?
Thanksgiving was great. Got to get home, see the family, watched a ton of college basketball. I don't think I missed a single game from Maui. Maui never disappoints. And especially this year, like moving to Honolulu, people didn't know how the vibes would be, but absolutely electric tournament. They did such a great job with that field. And then, college football, Huskies come down to 4th and 1 and break out the read option reverse with the season on the line. So Kalen DeBoer's a winner, man. He just wins, and Oregon's favored by 9.5 in the Pac-12 championship, and they're minus 340 to make the playoffs. So we might as well not even play it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing, actually, is that everyone has decided that Washington can't win. They would never, ever be able to beat Oregon. Best team probably in the history of college football. Some are saying that they could compete in the NFL. So we have no chance, which is great because if we lose, that's what we're supposed to happen. But if we win, it's one of the great upsets in the history of college football. And, there's no examples. It wasn't like Washington was a 12-point underdog at Oregon last year when they won. None of those things have ever happened before. So it's nice that we're playing with house money here in this one. But I actually was thinking, and this is true, I was much more stressed about the Wazoo game because if we lose to Wazoo to end the perfect season, that haunts forever. If we lose to the greatest college football team of all time, then, that's fine.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd argue like we're the only team to ever go 12-0 in the Pac-12 conference. We have four ranked wins. You got Oregon, Utah, Oregon State, Arizona. Ohio State's sitting at 6. If we lose, they're going to get in over us. But like, who have they beat? They beat Penn State. Cool. Who else have they beat? They beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame isn't all that. It's going to come down to the Pac-12 championship. Jack Westover, the tight end, said like, this is a playoff game. This is why you come to Washington. So UW knows what they're in for. Win or go home. I mean, go home would be like the Fiesta Bowl, but we're playing for it all this year.
Yeah, but I think that's at the end of the day, playing Oregon for a trip to the college football playoff is pretty sweet. So whatever happens there, and we'll be back on Friday and we can talk more about it. Obviously, we're extremely biased, but I also genuinely think that the hype train for Oregon is ridiculous. And if you look at some of their best performances, this Oregon State game last week, they've played a lot of teams the week after Washington has played them. And when you're playing one of the top teams in the conference, you're going to be a little beat up after that. So I'm not buying the Oregon hype regardless of what happens in the Washington game. It's not for me. But hoops is our focus today. Feast week, like we said, in the books. Some compelling action both in Maui or in Honolulu. And then also the battle for Atlantis. I think it's the lights. I think it's the dark gym. We get overtime. We get double overtime thrillers down there every year. What is it about Atlantis? And it also starts the last day of Maui, kind of kicks off, and then you've got that going to Thanksgiving. It continues for me to be right up there as like 1B to Maui.
Yeah.
I love the battle for Atlantis.
Yeah, like the field is never as good, but like this thing started out as a small tournament just in a ballroom in Atlantis, and they were getting mid-majors to come through. And every year the field's improving. It always lends itself to just crazy games. Like Stanford's double overtime game with Arkansas was nuts. I mean, it's just fun basketball. I don't know if the Battle for Atlantis is like the best litmus test. It feels like there's a lot of stuff that goes into the Battle for Atlantis that isn't just basketball. I mean, you hear about players at the craps table till 4 a.m. It's like, who can contain their players for that trip? Battle for Atlantis. Do you want to talk about it? One thing, Jared Haas's seat at Stanford is blistering hot. Like,
I bet Stanford against Northern Iowa. I think they're 5-point favorites.
Yeah, lose by 20.
And my bet was dead 3 minutes into the game. Stanford, we know what they are in football. They had a couple solid years, the Andrew Luck years. We know what they were then. We know that the fans don't care about Stanford football really at all. And can't really blame them. The team's given them nothing to be excited about, but even when they were good, people didn't care. And yeah, I mean, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's his 8th year. They've never made the tournament. His record before coming to Stanford was 4 years at UAB with 114 seed, no Ken Palm ranking above 116. I don't think he'd still be the coach if people cared about Stanford basketball.
Yeah, and it's just like a weird team this year. Like they lost Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram in the transfer portal to UNC. And then I had no idea that they picked up Jared Bynum, like the Providence point guard comes over. So it feels like they spent all their NIL money on like getting a point guard in Jared Bynum. And then they have Peja Stojakovic's son, who is a top 30 recruit. But he didn't really impress me in the tournament. And then Spencer Jones has been jacking up threes at Stanford for like 6-7 years now.
I think he was injured in the Northern Iowa game too, which I did not know that he wasn't going to play. That did not help my cause there. But yeah, I mean, anytime, obviously in Maui, it's always going to be Chaminade. They put up a reasonable fight in the first couple of games. They're going to be the team that comes out as the loser, 0-3. If you're the loser at the Battle for Atlantis, you're probably a reasonable team going into the tournament. So for Stanford to lose all 3 of those, they've lost to Santa Clara. To be fair, Santa Clara did beat Oregon over Feast Week. But yeah, I think from a biggest losers perspective of Feast Week, Stanford definitely jumps off as first. And at the Battle for Atlantis, I mean, for me, a team that I was clearly wrong on or I was down on, this Villanova team looks a lot like how Villanova teams look when they're good. They've got the interior presence with Dixon. Moore's fantastic. And obviously both of those guys were quality players on the, I think, Final Four team that they had a couple of years ago. They've done a nice job in the transfer portal, building out those 3-point shooting pieces, and then they're going to lock you up on the defensive end. Villanova, for me, definitely my most surprising to the upside team of Feast Week.
Yeah, Eric Dixon is looking like a first-team All-American. You know, he gives up 2 or 3 inches, the most big men in the country, but he makes them look silly. TJ Bamba, a big get out of the transfer portal coming up from Wazoo. Like a lot of people thought he might go to the league. I did hear that Villanova spent $3 million on this roster. So I'm expecting $3 million worth of performance. And Kyle Neptune, we talked about, doesn't make the tournament in year 1. It's looking like a good turnaround. Like this Villanova team's tough and just another feather in the cap of the Big East. The Big East is legit.
Yeah, and we'll talk Big East in a second. Interesting game actually tonight for Villanova. They're playing St. Joe's, who took Kentucky to overtime last week, which we just saw Kentucky look absolutely phenomenal last night. And we know Villanova lost that game to Penn. So we've got another little all Philly matchup tonight for Villanova out there. I think like 12, 13-point favorites. One to watch for me, because I think this Villanova team, like I said, they very much surprised me in Atlantis. You got to come back to Philly. You got to take care of business against St. Joe's before they've got a string of games against Kansas State, UCLA, and Creighton. So kind of a sneaky under the radar, but I'll be keeping my eyes on the result down there in Philly tonight.
Yeah, and you're high on Villanova. We had them 9 in our top 10. So looking at that loss at Penn more as a fluke, just tough game, playing in the Palestra, giving them credit for their wins. I think power ranking wise, Villanova is a top 10 team for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that obviously that went over North Carolina. North Carolina probably should have won that game. We'll talk North Carolina a little bit. Obviously, they play Tennessee tonight, which will be a great game. Memphis, they were destroying Memphis in the first half, and I think this Memphis team is pretty good. Memphis had looked solid in the first 2 rounds. They wreck Memphis. So, yeah, for me, Villanova right now, top 10 team, not just because of how they played down in Atlantis, but just the construction of the roster. And to your point, they spent the money to build it out. We talked a little bit about this before the season, that there's Jay Wright getting his hands a little bit more involved, I think, in this offseason. And if they're going to be spending that money, I kind of treating it like a GM almost, to kind of have a say in what they're doing in the transfer portal. I like the just design of this Villanova team in how historically the good Jay Wright teams played. So definitely a team to keep tabs on over the next few weeks as they try to build upon that result in Atlantis. And moving to Maui, which team, I mean, it's probably either Purdue or Marquette, but who was most impressive or surprised you most to the positive side down in Maui? Because I think it could go either way.
I'm gonna say the team that surprised me the most to the upside was actually UCLA. Like they finished 6th in the tournament. They lose to who they lose to in the first round?
Marquette, and
Marquette.
they
They lose to Marquette, who is a top 3 team in the country, and then they lose to Gonzaga. But UCLA looked really good. Adem Bona looks like he could be the Pac-12 Player of the Year. Sebastian Mack stepped up. Dylan Andrews stepped up. Like that team showed a lot, and they're gonna compete for a Pac-12 championship. Like I think Arizona's the leader in the clubhouse right now, but UCLA really impressed me. Outside of course, Purdue and Marquette, who look like 1A and 1B. You could argue like the only difference in the Purdue game is they hit a 75-footer going into the half, and then they win by 3. I thought UCLA was impressive. Like they go 1-2, but they showed a lot. They competed.
Yeah, I agree, and they were right there to win that Marquette game. I mean, they had the lead pretty comfortably in the second half. They haven't played. They play Thursday will be their next game post. They play UC Riverside, so obviously one they need to take care of. And unintentionally, that leads in perfectly to on Saturday, December 9th, the second game from now for UCLA is going to be at Villanova. So another chance for this young UCLA team to make a statement there in that Villanova game in a week or so. And then they play Ohio State. They're going to play Maryland before the Pac-12 season gets underway. So they don't have, all of their wins so far are outside the top 300 in KenPom. So they haven't quite gotten one across the line yet, but they're going to have those opportunities. And to your point, a lot of great pieces. And we've hyped up Mick Cronin a reasonable amount already on this pod. So we think highly of him. And I kind of, for Marquette, they were one who you were high on before the tournament. I think you had them winning. I wasn't too high on. I've spoke before the season. I don't trust Shaka in March. And because of that, I'm sure Marquette can play fine during the regular season, but it's not that exciting to me. Iguodaro is a great, he's fantastic. And when you combine him with Kolek, because Kolek's ability to slash, and then there's Iguodaro, he kind of pops out. We've talked about that little pop shot that he shoots. He's such a weapon. My concern for them, for Marquette, as a top 5 team in the country, as a true contender to win a national championship, is, you're not going to play Zach Edey ever, or you could play him again in March, but that's not the type of player you're going to come up against at any other point of the season. I just worry about their depth on the interior against any sort of high quality big men, which there are a reasonable amount among these top teams. UConn has them, Arizona has them. Like the teams they're going to need to beat to win a national title have good big guys. I was impressed by Marquette, but I also saw what I think is a red flag for them as a true national title contender.
Yeah, and we talked about it when we previewed the Purdue Marquette game. It was like the story of the game is going to be the whistle, because if Iguodaro picks up 2 fouls, they have Ben Gold, but again, he's like a guy that likes to step outside. He's more of a perimeter big. So I think it's like a lot of their games are going to come down to if Iguodaro can stay in the game and stay out of foul trouble, because he's right there. He's going to be a lottery pick. He added that push shot that we've talked about, just absolute freak athlete. But their depth definitely a concern. Really, you'd argue that they only go 8 deep, maybe 7 that really contribute. So, a bit of a concern, but Marquette looked great. But I definitely see your concerns with them headed into March.
Yeah, and I think they're a type of team because they will be prone to, when they get in foul trouble, they got to wait until they get their guys back on the court. And that's kind of what we saw in that Purdue game. They fell behind because Iguodaro wasn't in there. And then Gold also instantly picked up fouls. So, but when they got to play, Iguodaro pretty much played the whole second half. And then it came down to the wire. The type of team who is going to be incredibly tough to beat at home. You tend to be on the right side of the whistles when you play at home. We saw what they did in the Big East last year. So as a contender to win and dominate a reasonable amount of teams in the Big East, I'd fully expect that. We'll see if throughout this year they can come up with a strategy basically to deal with that lack of depth on the interior. And then Purdue, what's your post Feast Week title, post Maui Invitational title, number 1 team based on performance so far this year? Not number 1 for me, just on like if I thought every team played against each other, who would win. But what's the 30,000 foot view on Purdue?
Purdue, worst case, is the number 2 team in the country. I think we both agree that we'd take UConn over Purdue with the power ranking. But UConn, if they have like a sub 300 strength of schedule, but this is just going off of what we saw from them last year. And also Alex Caravan looks like an NBA player. He's 6'8". He's knocking down shots. Donovan Clingan, Tristan Newton, like UConn has the guys. But you can't take anything away from Purdue. And I think in the rankings that Purdue should be number one. They have the best resume in the country by far. Is it their year? Like I'm torn between they're following the Virginia storyline and like you lose the 16 seed, you come back, you win it all. Zach Edey, man, like I don't think anyone in the country can really guard him. You need to send a double team, and then it's just gonna come down to their guards. Can those guards make shots in March? Fletcher Lawyer. I think what I liked about Purdue is they had a lot of different guys step up. It wasn't just Braden Smith. It wasn't just Fletcher Lawyer. They just have a lot of guys that are stepping up, knocking down shots, and they have those core pieces like Caleb First, Mason Gillis. They're really tough on the glass. They play good defense, so it's just such a well-rounded team. I don't know. Purdue's, I definitely think they're going to win the Big Ten.
Oh, yeah. I think the Big Ten, for me, is one of the – we talked actually before the season that the Big Ten outside the top teams didn't look good, and that was when we thought Michigan State was pretty good. And yeah, I think that Michigan State's going to be fine, but not that exciting. Ohio State won some sort of little 4-team tournament that they were in. They beat Alabama, but then Alabama just lost to Clemson last night. So the Big Ten, besides Purdue, has yet to really show anything. I think Purdue should have a cakewalk through the Big Ten this year for a large part. I think Illinois might be all right. Our guy Steve, Illinois has only losses to Marquette, and if Marquette's as good as we think they are, I think Illinois has got some potential. We'll see them next week against FAU in the Jimmy V, which I think will be an exciting matchup. But for me, Purdue, one of the just again little red flags here. So early, they played some tough teams, to be fair, but 310th in the country in offensive steal percentage, so like turning the ball over due to steals. They've got to take care of the ball, and I just worry about them against good teams. They're never going to blow someone out. Like they could, sure, they could blow somebody out, but just the style that they play and the reliance on having to go inside to Edey and things like that, it's just not the type of, let's get ahead by 20 and run people out of the gym, which is obviously what cost them and is cost them in March to just play a style of play where it's tough to just put teams away. And as that pressure builds in those games. So I think they are improving in that sense. To your point, some of those guys that they've got in the portal, Lance Jones looks great. They're making progress there, but I think for them, that's got to be the thing throughout the Big Ten season that they're trying to ingrain in themselves, that ability to kind of put the distance between teams, take care of the basketball, don't give away those easy steal, run out turnovers.
Yeah.
But Zach Edey he's literally unstoppable. Because even if you do stop him, that means your whole team is fouled out. So it's like, whether he's scoring or dominating the game from his stat line, he's very likely putting your best players on the interior in foul trouble, and then you can't score, which is what happened to Marquette. So he's is truly unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah, Purdue's legit.
What other team, or a couple of teams that I think jumped out to us during Feast Week, or I guess there's going to be Colorado State, that Creighton game. I think I actually don't know if I'm really high on Colorado State or disgusted by what took place from Creighton, because we've spoken about Creighton. I had made a top 10 or top 20 on like Thursday or whatever before that game was played, basically. And I had Creighton like 5 or 6. And they got absolutely destroyed. Colorado State's offense, to be fair, is I think 4th in the country now in effective field goal percentage. They're 4th in 2-point percentage. They assist the 5th most baskets in the country. The offense is great. The defense is solid enough. But if you had to pick, Colorado State's more impressive or Creighton is more disappointing, which side do you take in the result of that game?
I think Colorado State's more impressive. I think they're going to make the tournament for sure. Colorado State was really impressive. I think there were some learnings out of that Creighton game that are a little concerning. Trey Alexander's a great player, but he doesn't have the athleticism to really beat people off the dribble and score from all 3 levels. And then Bailey Shireman can knock down shots, but he's not really great at creating his own. And then Kalkbrenner's great. Like, he makes his free throws. He's a rim roller, rim runner, but he's not a guy that you really dump into and he's going to go get you a bunch of buckets. So we've been high on Creighton. We've had them in that UConn Marquette tier. I definitely think they moved down to like the Providence tier for me in the Big East right now.
And I think part of what you're pointing there, the Trey Alexander and the Creighton style of play, they're 53rd in the country in assists per field goal make. They want to move the ball around. They want to play quickly. Their offense needs to be free flowing. they're not the type of roster to beat you off the dribble, go one-on-one and drive on you. And I think Colorado State did a good job of making them play in isolation. And in the Big East, yeah, the top teams in the Big East, UConn and Marquette, are fantastic. They're going to be able to play you however they want to play. You're going to have a tough time if you're Creighton regardless. But I think because of the quality of the coaching in the Big East, if you have such a glaring weakness with your style of play, you can't play isolation basketball, well, then the defenses are going to, force you into that style of play. So I agree with you. Red flags for Creighton. For me, on that spectrum, I'm more disappointed in Creighton than I am impressed with Colorado State. Colorado State's going to play Colorado tonight. We'll talk about that game in a little bit. That will be, for me, a chance for them to kind of prove it scenario tonight against Colorado. But yeah, disappointing for Creighton. And because Villanova was so impressive, for me, my Big East rankings now would be UConn, Marquette, Villanova, Creighton as my top four.
Yep.
And then Dusty May and the FAU Owls wearing some truly electric uniforms down there in Orlando. Maybe the best uniforms in college basketball. They've got these new black uniforms with like pink and reddish font on them. They look legit. They beat Butler, who actually then won, I think, their next two games. So that's a solid victory. They beat Texas A&M, who's good. And then they just smashed Virginia Tech in the championship. This FAU team lost to Bryant, I think, before this. To me, now that they go down there and win that tournament, you just say, this is a team who has their sights set on getting back to March and proving themselves there. You slip up against Bryant. You hope that doesn't happen again. But I think they've legitimized themselves as a contender once again this year by what took place in Orlando.
Yeah, it's just a good example of never too high, never too low after one game in college basketball. Like, you can just have an off shooting night and the other team can be on. They lost to Bryant. A bunch of people were saying they're overrated. They don't belong in the top 25, yada, yada. Well, they go out, they beat Butler, good win. They beat Texas A&M, which is the best win of the weekend for them, because that's going to carry weight. Like, Texas A&M is going to be competing for an SEC championship, and they have a win over them. And then they go out and they don't just beat Virginia Tech; they run them out of the gym. FAU is a top 25 team. They have the talent, and they credit to them. Like, they got into they got into an MTE and they're able to go get wins on their resume before they get into conference play. And that's going to be huge for them, not just making the tournament, but getting up on the seed line.
Who right now between Memphis and FAU is your pick in the AAC? Because I think they both looked, obviously Memphis got crushed in the championship, but Memphis beat Michigan. They beat Arkansas. They looked solid. I like the perimeter play for Memphis, but then FAU did this. Who's on the spot right now?
I'll take FAU. I think that FAU is the more complete team. I think they have better chemistry.
Yep.
Everyone, Memphis filled up in the transfer portal. FAU brought their whole team back and ran it back. Dusty May came back. I'll take FAU.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think FAU is both my pick in the AAC and who I would expect to be a bigger threat come March. Interesting one for FAU tomorrow. They played Liberty, who, if I just said they played Liberty, you'd be like, man, okay. Liberty right now, 39 in KenPom. They've won 4 games against kind of 100-level KenPom opponents. They're going to FAU, so a battle of number 39 Liberty versus number 20 FAU. Again, in that kind of prove-it scenario, we just talked about Villanova's got a reasonably challenging game with St. Joe's. Colorado State's playing Colorado. FAU now played Liberty. All these teams who performed nicely in their tournaments, they've got a chance to kind of prove it in their next game, and that'll be the case tomorrow for FAU against Liberty.
Yeah, and I think you'll learn more about teams moving forward than you learn in these MTEs, because it's hard to go out there and play 3 games in 3 days. You're turning around on your scout. You're just not getting as much as you get for these matchups where you have time to prep. So you play 3 games, you take a lot of learnings back with you. You see what you need to work on. You self-scout, and then you move forward. Yeah, Richie McKay's Liberty Flames. They're legit. That'll be a good matchup.
And one other team on the feast week disappointed that I forgot to talk about during Maui. I'm disappointed with Tennessee. We had built the hype up about Tennessee, that this was going to be different, that Dalton Connect is going to be, a game changer for them. And And we'll talk about the North Carolina game coming up, and they're going to have a chance. I mean, their only losses are to Purdue and Kansas. Like, you can't hold that really against anyone. This rock fight, we're going to play football against you style of play has been what they've done before, and that's good enough to be a top 3 team in the SEC. That's good enough to get you to the Sweet 16. I was a little disappointed with Tennessee as well.
Yeah, it's just the same story. At least it's early and people can step up, and Purdue and Kansas might end up both being Final Four teams. And then you look back and they're not bad losses in any way, shape, or form. But it's the same storyline. They want to play this rock fight. They want to play this just beat you up, pound you. But then they get into situations where they're in close games, and it's like, who do they go to go get buckets down the stretch? Because their play style doesn't lend themselves to blowing teams out. Like an 8-point lead is for Tennessee
Right.
is like a 16-point lead for other teams. Like it feels like every game is like 53-47 at like the under 8 media. Like they're just in these rock fights. They have these senior guards that I'm looking at them to step up. I don't know. I wouldn't count them out after the Maui Invitational. Like Kansas is tough. Obviously Purdue's tough. They played them close. Big test tonight against North Carolina.
And then one other team I think that was shined on Feast Week, or at least did what they were supposed to do. BYU. Mark Pope, year 1 in the Big 12. The top of the Big 12, Baylor, another team. The top of the Big 12 to me is it's always compelling. It's the Big 12, but Kansas, I still think they're good. I think they're figuring it out, but their core starting lineup is as good as any starting lineup in the country. They're just struggling because they don't have the depth, but I trust Bill Self over the course of the season to get that figured out. Baylor looks great. I really like this Baylor team. But then there's BYU in year 1 in the Big 12. They've started 6-0. They beat San Diego State by 9, and San Diego State's looking like a solid top 20 Ken Pom level team. This team, offensively, and their ability to shoot the 3 ball is phenomenal. They're 7th in the country in 3-point attempts. Over half their shots are coming from 3, but they're shooting 39%. They've got 4 guys shooting 40% from 3. They're 8th in the country in assists per field goal, so they're slinging the ball around. Everybody's getting touches. And then on the flip side, on the defensive end, they have some of the fewest 3-point attempts against them, and they have some of the fewest assists against them. So they're basically, what they're doing on offense, they're trying to completely take away from the opponent. Ken Pom has them number 10 right now. They're 16th on offense, 17th on defense, top 10 in the country on rebounding on both sides of the ball. They don't play really anybody until they play Baylor on January 9th. I think we're looking at a BYU team that's going to be climbing the rankings throughout December. Yeah.
How about the fact that BYU is picked 13th in the preseason poll in the Big 12? The Big 12's, it's going to be a war just like it is every year. BYU taking that step up. Mark Pope is a great coach, and he's a guy that's due for a big job. Like he's got to be right there in the running for the next big job that opens, because he can flat out coach. I think he came from Utah Valley State, and then played that up-tempo style of basketball, taking threes. But yeah, the way that BYU rebounds, they're a really good team, and just a Ken Pom darling, like top 10 in Ken Pom. And I think we learned last night, like there's media darlings and there's Ken Pom darlings, and like Miami, number 8 in the country, Ken Pom has him at 38. He says, no way. So our guy, Ken Pom.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to take the Ken Pom or larger. We're working on a consensus ranking across different ranking sites and things like that. Give me the computers over the AP poll every day of the week and twice on Sundays. I mean, it's not even a question for me ranking those, comparing those teams.
AP voters, it's just like they don't even watch all the games. It's like consensus bias. It's just,
and there's just so many games and so many teams in college basketball that a computer is going to be better at figuring out than a human could be. But yeah, the Big 12 right now, I didn't even mention Houston. Obviously, Houston is looking fantastic. They're 7-0. They have a couple not crazy great wins, but they've beaten Utah and Dayton, who you'd consider solid enough teams, and the games weren't even close. I mean, they've been absolutely crushing everybody that they've played. And we know what Kelvin Sampson can do. And then Oklahoma, another surprise, impressive team from Feast Week. They go to San Diego and beat USC. Porter Moser, we talked about him maybe being on the hot seat before the year. He's got the boys playing defense. And when Porter Moser's got them playing defense, you need to keep your eyes on what's happening. They're 5th in the country in effective field goal percentage. They're top 20 in both 3-point and 2-point defense. So you just add another top team to the Big 12. TCU's undefeated. We haven't even talked about Texas. The Big 12 to me, I know we were saying Big East before the season, but at the moment, I'm going to have to elevate the Big 12 top to bottom, or at least kind of top 8 teams or so, as the deeper conference, even though I think I'm higher on UConn than any team in the country.
Yeah, Porter Moser was definitely on the hot seat headed into the season, and they're picked 12th in the preseason poll. That only gets that seat even hotter. But they've looked great, and it just speaks again to like the depth of Big 12. We were both saying the Big East is probably the best conference in the country, but top to bottom depth wise, it's got to be the Big 12. Like, I don't know about the cream of the crop. If you want to take like UConn, Marquette, Villanova over Kansas, Baylor, Texas, sure. But as you start working down the list, like if there's a Big East, Big 12 battle, definitely got to go with the Big 12. Oh, Houston, obviously at the top of the Big 12 as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Big East, again, looking at Ken Palm, they've got number 3, 5, 14, and 16. When you look at Connecticut, Marquette, Villanova, and Creighton, and the next team being Xavier at 41. We've got 1, 6, 8, 10, 22, 26, 30, 31, 36, 45, 47 in the Big 12. There is not going to be any easy games in the Big 12. The environments will be great, and it's a hat tip to the Big 12 with the additions of Houston and BYU. Those aren't necessarily, they're fine football teams. BYU is all right at football, but just knowing that we want to be the best basketball conference in America. They're going to add Arizona next year.
Yeah.
They are set to be the conference in college basketball, I think, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I like what the Big 12 did. Like they're not trying to be the SEC. They know that they can be the best basketball conference in the country, and they can have very competitive football, and like they have great matchups. Like Iowa State, Kansas State, Farmageddon, just a great example of like a fun Big 12 matchup, a fun Big 12 rivalry. And the Big 12 is definitely good enough in football that they'll put a team in the playoff, especially with the expansion to 12.
Indeed. I know you've got some, let's just get to it. You've got some takes queued up. I'm going to say if I say hot take, then I disagree. If I say not a hot take, then I agree with you. You've dialed some up after Feast Week. Let's get after it.
All right. Hot or not, Baylor will win the Big 12.
I'm going to say not, in the sense that I think Baylor is a really good team. I have them in the top 10 of my rankings. I can't remember exactly where I had them, but do I think they win the Big 12? No. Just because, like we just talked about, you could list 6 teams, and I'd probably say none of them will win the Big 12, because how am I supposed to pick amongst these, 6 or 7 competitive teams? Can Baylor contend for the Big 12? And is that something that I would have thought before the season? That, I think, is the surprising part here, but I wouldn't say it's a hot take that they can contend. Can they win? Probably not. But I mean, they're 6th in Ken Palm. Have you watched them play at all?
Yeah, they looked really good in New York. They got guys that can score. Ray J. Dennis, Jalen Bridges, Jacoby Walter. Their big man is definitely an NBA player once he develops. They look good, and they're playing that Scott Drew style of basketball with the guards just getting open looks and firing them.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's exciting. Similar to the Villanova story, where it's like, how these teams should look if they're the style, that aligns with how that coach wants to coach. And Jacoby Walter is one of the purest shooters for his size and his ability to slash. He's a top 3 right now for me, freshman in the country. He's phenomenal.
Lottery pick for sure.
Oh, if you don't draft him in the lottery, you should be fired as a G. You could, I think he could play in the NBA today. If the game was tomorrow, he's scoring 15 points in the NBA because he's so pure. He got foul trouble against Florida. They still took care of business there because Ray J. Dennis just scored every single possession.
Yeah, hitting fadeaways, just everything.
And then they've got Nunn's good. Misi on the inside. He's athletic and excellent, and he's that style of big that Baylor loves to have. And then you've got Jalen Bridges, who's 6'9", and he's shooting 50% from 3. Like, they're good. They're really, really good. Again, I don't know if they can win the Big 12, because it's going to be whoever wins the Big 12 is going to have an unbelievable. They'll probably be the number 1 seed in the country if you win the Big 12. But this Baylor team's legit.
I'm going to butcher the name, but the big man Chuma Tachua, he's hitting threes this year. So you got that big coming off the bench behind an NBA player. Like, Baylor's legit.
Yep. So I'm going to talk about Auburn later, but that win over Auburn to me is still like one of the top 5 wins in the country and we saw Auburn play in person. They're really impressive.
Yeah.
The rest of the Baylor schedule, they played a joke team in the next game. They destroyed Nicholls State as they should. They play Seton Hall. They should win that. They play Michigan State. They should win that. And then they're going to play Duke on a neutral floor here in New York on December 20th. Mark your calendar, Hunter. That could be a delightful matchup. But yeah, Baylor legit.
All right, hot or not, Houston will hold other teams under 60 points per game in Big 12 play.
I'm going to say hot take. I'm going to disagree because not that they're not capable of doing it. I just think some of these top teams they'll probably keep like half the teams, the West Virginias, Oklahoma State might not score a single basket.
Yeah, Oklahoma State might get 37.
Yeah. If Oklahoma State gets 10 by halftime, I think it's going to be like the Iowa football 0.5 over under on Oklahoma State scoring in that game. I also just need to see Houston play against somebody. They played like we just said, they played Dayton, Utah. That's fine. But I can't fully buy in on Houston until I see it against some of these top Big 12 opponents.
Yeah. All right. Hot or not, Arkansas will miss the NCAA tournament.
Not. I don't think Arkansas is very good. We're going to talk about them against Duke later. Unfortunately for them, I think he's okay. It sounded like he's going to be fine. Their best player, Trayvon Mark, like destroyed his back in Atlanta. Yeah. Another weird. It's the black. It's the blue. It's the weird stuff happens down there in Atlanta. I switched the channel because that game's a blowout, and I come back and they're not showing they're in the studio and they're like something bad happened on the court. And I'm like, this sucks. Sounds like he's okay though. I just don't know. I mean, they lost UNC Greensboro. You can't lose that one. They should have lost to Stanford. They got lucky that they survived that in double overtime. Then they lose to Memphis, North Carolina. They're going to play Duke tonight at home. It is kind of to your point, the higher low of college basketball, an interesting bounce back spot for them in a big game. But they're a bubble team for me. And if I had to say, do they make it or not at this point, I'd say no. I also don't know why Khalif Battle, who's a really good player for them, is coming off the bench. Get him the ball more. If I see Khalif Battle getting more touches for Arkansas, I'll change my opinion. But Musselman icing out Battle, who's been their best player in Atlantis, was weird for me. So I don't like the vibes right now at Arkansas. Yeah,
and like Trevon Brazil's a good player, but I do not like him taking threes off the dribble. Like, you're the 5-man. The must bus. It's like their shot selection's not great, and the must bus gets rolling in February and March. It's a thing. It takes some time, but I'm with you. Like, I don't think they'll make the tournament. All right, hot or not, Arizona will make the Final Four.
I'm going to say not. I think they make the Final Four, but it is kind of a you got to prove it to me scenario because this Arizona team's looked great in the regular season and both for the first 2 years under Tommy Lloyd. I don't love teams that play outrageously fast pace in March. I can't remember what the stats are. I tweeted it out before March Madness last year. We'll obviously talk about that down the road, but teams that play like top 50 KenPom pace just don't do good in March Madness because the game it's almost a different game with how it gets slowed down. The refs call absolutely nothing. The pressure builds. So it is a different game. And for that reason, I guess if I was a betting man, I don't even know if I'd bet on it just because, again, I worry about it a little bit in March. But from what they've done so far this year, that win at Duke is arguably the best win in the country so far this year when you consider that it was on the road versus those Purdue wins and come on a neutral site. They're rebounding the ball. They're top 5 in the country in both rebounding on offense and defense. I really like this Arizona team. I almost put them number 1. They're going to play Purdue in 3 weeks, and I think that's will be our litmus test for Arizona. How about you? Is this a Final Four team for you?
It has the potential to be, but until Tommy Lloyd proves it at Arizona, it's not. I mean, I do love that they went out and got Caleb Love, a guy that's done it before. I like that they got Keyshawn Johnson from San Diego State. Umar Ballo's a great big. Kylan Boswell looks like a first-team All-Pac point guard. I definitely think they're going to win the Pac-12. I definitely think they're going to be a two seed, maybe even a 1 seed. But when the game slows down, it's just like we talk about. It's a different ball game come March, and the teams that can, I don't know though, because they do have Caleb Love and he can go get his own. So maybe this is Arizona's year. I don't think they'll make the Final Four, but if you, it wouldn't be shocking to anyone.
What I'll have my eyes on, and I think I haven't talked about this before the season, So I've got Tommy Lloyd's resume from Arizona pulled up here. First year they were number 5 in Ken Palm, number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They lose in the Sweet 16. Last year, 11 in Ken Palm, a 2 seed. They lose in the first round. And this year they're number 4. But in Ken Palm, you can just see all the stats for the coach year by year. Everything looks identical so far. The stats are, this has been the exact same team now, 3 straight years. And so I want to see, the pace hasn't changed at all. Everything looks the same. That it's going to work in the regular season. They're going to crush teams in the Pac-12 for the most part. They're going to win a lot of games. They could beat Purdue. I think they could beat. They've got the athletic bigs to beat Purdue. They've got the guard play to do it. But we're going to have to wait and see on this one. But so far it looks exactly like the Arizona teams of previous years. And due to that, I don't know that that's what you necessarily want to see if you want Arizona to win the national championship.
Yeah. All right. Last one for you. Hot or not, Adem Bona wins Pac-12 Player of the Year.
I'm going to say hot. I would have been with you after the Marquette game. He's just not polished enough, I don't think, to win Pac-12 Player of the Year.
He can't really catch the ball well.
He's a good player. He's athletic. He's a threat on defense. I think he's going to get in too much foul trouble. I think he's just a little too just crazy on the defensive end. Fouls a little too much. I think the Pac-12 Player of the Year is going to be an Arizona player. I think they've got a couple of options for it. I like Bona. I like you say, like we talked about at the beginning. I probably would have agreed with you just from the Marquette game, but he shot up like a rocket for me in my like mental rankings, and then it kind of started to, it's like a stock, that kind of popped and then started to slide.
I think he's like the highest wow factor guy. He's definitely that. Like, he's going to make the craziest plays. Like, he'll probably be on SC top 10 more than anyone in the country. But I would take like an Osa Ighodaro over him just from a polished big man perspective. And then like also in the Pac-12, Oregon's gotten N'Faly Dante. He's been hurt, but he'll be a good big. I mean, Oregon, they dropped that game to Santa Clara, but never count Dana Altman out for sure.
Oregon's got like some crazy injury problems. I didn't look too much at it, but it sounds like there's injury problems for them. A couple other teams to just talk about. Is Gonzaga good? What's going on with Gonzaga? What's our takeaway post Maui on Gonzaga?
Gonzaga's good. I don't know if Gonzaga is great, but Gonzaga, if you got him when we said when St. Mary's was favored over them to win the WCC, like, you got to be feeling pretty good about holding that Gonzaga ticket right now. Like, Gonzaga is good. Gonzaga is really good. They're a top 25 team. They're probably a top 15 team when it's all said and done. They have the new players coming in, so there's not as much continuity to start. So, like, I trust Mark Few to piece it together. And the thing for them, though, is with Steel Ventures going out, they're going to have to find the guy that's going to step up. It's probably going to be Dusty Stroman.
Dusty.
I know that's your guy. T-shirt guy. Gonzaga having the T-shirt guy is Gonzaga having the T-shirt guy step up should not surprise anyone.
Bill Walton loved Dusty as well. It's the type of player that Walton's going to enjoy. And that actually for me was one of the highlights of Feast Week was the return of Bill Walton. Let's get him. It's tough to listen to him out here on the East Coast. I don't get as much Bill Walton. I got too much Bill Walton when we lived in Seattle. I got tired of it. I miss it now. And I'd like it sprinkled into my life a little bit more often. Yeah,
Bill Walton's like if you don't have a dog in the fight, Bill Walton's like the best guy to have on. But if you have a team, I mean, even if you like bet on a game, especially if it's not going your way and you have Bill Walton off talking about like bonsai trees and like ayahuasca trips, it's frustrating.
And then we might have problems at Alabama this year too. I think there's some issues going on. Nate Oates, they lost to Clemson by 8 last night at home. Yep. I think the SEC, or I guess, give me your top 4 in the SEC post or right now. What's your top 4 ranking of the SEC? Because we also saw Mississippi State lose last night, who I thought was supposed to be pretty good. I bet them -8 and they lost easily to Georgia Tech. Terrible result last night.
Yeah, the SEC not off to a hot start, but okay. If I had to rank the SEC, I'm going to go Texas A&M number 1. I trust Buzz Williams. I trust Tyrese Radford, Henry Coleman. They got guys. I'm going to put Kentucky number 2. I think what we saw from them was just crazy impressive last night. This looks like one of the better teams Coach Cal's had. I'm going to put Auburn number 3. Maybe it's just because we saw him in person, but I really like what Auburn has. I really like Aiden Holloway, Joni Broom down low. And then I'll go with Tennessee at 4, but like that's a big drop because they were plus 300 odds on favorites to win the SEC. I'm dropping them all the way down to 4. Again, big opportunity tonight against North Carolina, but for now, I definitely have Tennessee at 4.
Yeah, I think I go Kentucky number 1. I was really impressed by this Kentucky team against Kansas. It obviously didn't work out that game, but it's that there's a lot of different pieces that Calipari's putting together, but they have the combination of athleticism and skill that I just haven't seen across the board from many teams. Like they have a couple 7-footers apparently that might get eligible too that aren't even in there. But this Kentucky team to me, come season end and come SEC play, is going to be a real threat. What Reed Shepherd is doing is a joke. He's shooting 63% from 3. He leads the country in effective field goal percentage. He's 5th in steals. It's unbelievable.
And that's a guy that people weren't even talking about coming into the year. Like they were talking about DJ Wagner. They were talking about some of their other freshmen. He's 19 for 27 on threes this year. And he's got to have the most pure shot in college basketball. Like that thing rips the net center. He's not getting any room.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking about it last night. I think Billis was on the call, and he said and this was before he even made any shots in the Miami game. And he obviously last night was probably the best game of his career. And as soon as he hits the floor, Bill's like, I watched this guy in shoot around. He's the best shooter I've watched in shoot around since JJ Redick. That's pretty high praise, and so far looks to be true. And I think just statistically, what excites me about this Kentucky team, their offense is already fantastic. They're 4th in effective field goal percentage. They lead the country in turnover percentage. So like the offense is already clicking this early in the year. The defense is okay. I think it was solid enough last night against Miami, but they're 59th in KenPom defensively. Calipari's teams get better defensively as the year goes on. You know, he's going to coach them up. He's going to get that defense to where it needs to be. So give me Kentucky at the top. Give me Auburn number 2. We're high on Auburn. Their only losses to Baylor so far, and we really like Baylor. Then I'll go Tennessee, and then I'll go Texas A&M. I need to see a little bit more consistency on the offensive side from Texas A&M. They're going to play Virginia tonight. We'll talk about that in a second. But I think those 4 teams, if any of them played against each other right now, pretty evenly matched. And then the step below that, you've got the Mississippi State. Florida looks much improved this year under Todd Golden. Arkansas, we just talked about them. South Carolina's undefeated. So I think the SEC may not have the depth that we maybe thought before the year. They're not quite as strong, but it's still a clear, for me, 3rd best conference behind the Big 12 and the Big 10.
I think it's also it's just the most open conference. Like any of those teams we discussed could win it, and it wouldn't be surprising.
Agreed. And that leads nicely into the SEC ACC Challenge Day 2. A 1-2 betting day for me to start the ACC SEC Challenge. I bet all SEC teams, not intentionally. 2 of those backfired on me. LSU sucks.
LSU sucks.
And to be fair, the mistake, and we're about to talk about these bets here, got to switch the mindset from betting the neutral site games to factoring in the home court advantage. I don't think I'd quite flipped the switch last night. And then first half, I'm watching LSU up at Syracuse, and the foul calls are the most atrocious things I've ever seen in my life. LSU guys are getting hammered. The refs are just like, nah, we got nothing. So got to adapt now they're back on campus.
Yeah, for sure.
So the first one is the marquee game tonight, 7:15 on ESPN, the Tennessee team that we talked about against North Carolina. We didn't touch too much on North Carolina. I thought they were solid enough. At the Battle for Atlantis, they took care of business against Northern Iowa. They lose in overtime to Villanova. That was a close game, and they had some serious foul trouble there as well. I think Harrison Ingram is a fantastic player. Obviously, Baycott's good. RJ Davis is good. Elliot Cadeau, the freshman, we talked about the issue for North Carolina before the year being the lack of assists last year. Cadeau, that's all he does is pass, and that's great. And then Cormac Ryan transfers in from Notre Dame. I'm seeing that. Is he injured? Is he going to play
he got injured. Yeah, he got injured. I forgot. He was at Stanford, then Notre Dame, then UNC. That's right. Yeah, he got injured.
Yeah, hold on. Let's see if he's playing tonight because that's important. Cormac Ryan is warming up. TBD. TBD. So we're making this bet unknowing if Cormac Ryan is going to play tonight. The lines here for this one, let's take a look. We've got North Carolina minus 1.5, Tennessee plus 2.5, and over under in the 143.5 to 145 range. I think this North Carolina number probably would be a little bit bigger if Cormac Ryan is playing. What's kind of your read on this Tennessee North Carolina game tonight, pending? Well, let's assume Cormac Ryan plays, but he might not.
I think that this is a spot where you can buy low on Tennessee. I think Tennessee is super physical, and they have the bigs down low to match Baycott's presence. And they have the guards, I think, to force UNC into some tough shots. And we've seen it before from UNC. They can get chucky. They can get a little happy, just start firing. If I had a side, I think I'd actually be on Tennessee tonight. I think it's a good opportunity. Like, if the ball bounces a different way in Maui, maybe they knock off Purdue. Give me Tennessee tonight.
And this will be a choose your fighter example. I'm going to go with the Tar Heels tonight, the minus 1.5. I really would love if Cormac Ryan plays. I'd already decided that I was betting North Carolina earlier today, and then I just realized Cormac Ryan's not playing, so I'm not quite as excited as I was about this bet earlier. But for me, I agree with all that. I think it is going to be a close game. I think it is kind of a coin flip type of battle. UNC does a nice job of getting to the free throw line. They're 36th in the country so far at free throw attempts, and Tennessee's 291st in the country, and we saw how many free throws Purdue shot against them. I think Ingram has the ability to match up with Dalton Connect, and we kind of talked about for Tennessee, if you can get Connect out of the game, really where else are they going to go? So give me the home court advantage. We saw the impact of home court last night in some of these SEC, ACC games, so I'll take North Carolina minus 1.5. But it is one of those, to your point, the buy low opportunities on a Tennessee team that didn't really suffer any atrocious losses at all down in Maui. They didn't necessarily play their best or get the outcome that they were looking for. But one where whoever picks up this victory, I think I had them kind of on the fringes of my top 10, both Tennessee and North Carolina. I think the winner here cements themselves as a clear top 15 team in the country and on the fringes of maybe a top 10.
Yeah, just a big opportunity for both teams tonight. I think it's definitely a coin flip game. But yeah, definitely a big opportunity to get a quad one win.
And then next up, right after that game on ESPN, the Must Bus, trying to get the wheels back aligned on the Must Bus after some issues in Atlantis. It is Duke at Arkansas. I saw that the students at Arkansas were lined up out the door yesterday.
Yeah,
so
they're camping out.
Yeah, so it should be a pretty good atmosphere down there in Fayetteville. The line here, minus 4.5 on Duke, plus 5 on Arkansas. Arkansas 1-6 against the spread so far this year. And over under in the 155 or 149.5 to 150.5. I'll kick this one off. Give me Duke. Give me Duke. I think this Duke team is good. I think Philip Kowski is one of the best players in the country. I didn't love what I saw from Tyrese Proctor, Jamie Roach, Caleb Foster, Jared McCain against Arizona, but I've liked statistically and what they've done since then. That win over Michigan State was solid enough, little bounce back to kind of get the things moving forward. I know they struggled, I think, in the first half against Southern Indiana. That's going to happen, especially when you know you've got a big game on the horizon. Arkansas could easily be coming into this game on a 4-game losing streak. It's not like this line is crazy, Duke minus 10 or something like that. I think Duke is obviously the better team here. I'll take the Blue Devils in this one, but I am a little afraid of that first kind of big road game, the key need for Arkansas to figure something out. So I have concerns about this game, but I have no doubt that Duke is the better basketball team by far.
Yeah, this is a fun matchup. On one hand, you have Arkansas, you have the printed towel game. They've got beat Duke on every single seat. So it feels like their national championship. On the other hand, you have Duke wearing their black uniforms as they do on the road when they're going to a team's funeral. So that's what they say in the Brotherhood. I don't have a side on this one, but I'm definitely excited to watch it. I think this is the marquee matchup of the night. Not maybe like two best teams, but definitely most exciting. I mean, Bud Walton Arena is going to be absolutely rocking for the Hogs. You're going to get that Woo Pig Suey going. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I agree. Musbus is going to be. I guarantee you, Musbus has the towel in his hand at some point during the game or before the game, getting people fired up.
Does Musbus take his shirt off if they win?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. There, he also said, I saw that he's never watched more tape than he did after the. So that's why I'm a little concerned, because I know they're treating this game like the national championship. But if Duke's got the funeral jerseys on, if Shire's going to have them focused up, I'll take them. And a stat that I like here: Arkansas 20th most points from the free throw line in the country. Like, they can't score. The only hope they have is to just come flying down the lane and hope people foul them.
Yeah.
Duke's 33rd in the country in free throw attempts defensively, so they don't foul. I think Arkansas just struggles enough to score the basketball. They may get out to an early start. I assume that they will get off to an early start. Give me Filipowski. Give me 30 from him tonight, and give me Duke on the road winning this one by 8-10.
I like it. That's what I like it.
So good one there. And the next one, let's just stay in the ACC. I don't have a side for this one because Virginia is blacklisted for me from a betting perspective at this point of the season. They're playing Texas A&M, your current selection in the SEC. This one, Virginia -2.5, Texas A&M +3.5. We've got ourselves a Virginia style over under here of 124.5. Virginia comes in with 4 consecutive unders. That's Virginia basketball. Texas A&M, another good defensive team. To be fair to Texas A&M, they did score 89 against FAU. They kind of got into a run and gun battle with them. Virginia has a good win over Florida. That win's looking better and better by the week. They've lost to Wisconsin. They won in a rock fight, 56-54 over West Virginia. They're 42nd in KenPom. Texas A&M is 18th. Any thoughts on this one?
Buzz Williams coming over from Virginia Tech to A&M. So he knows what it's like to go play at Virginia. I like this A&M team. Like, I believe in this team. So I'll take A&M with the points tonight.
Yeah. And again, I'm not going to take an official stance on this one. I've been trying to track my bets. So this is not a trackable one. I will not claim it as a win or a loss. One stat here that I think is a concerning one for Virginia. Texas A&M, number 1 in the country in offensive rebound percentage. Virginia, 329th in defensive rebound percentage. A lot of second chance opportunities should be there tonight for Texas. You assume they're going to miss a lot of shots against Virginia, and they're not the greatest offensive team shooting-wise. They don't turn the ball over. Yeah, I think this is an interesting one to watch for sure. I think the Charlottesville crowd will be there to kind of try to carry Virginia, pick them up after a fine but not amazing start to the season. If Texas A&M can pick up this victory, they would add that to a win on the road at Ohio State. I think that's another reason to be positive on Texas A&M, is they've gone on the road and they've gotten a true road win against a good Ohio State team. They're going to play this one. Then they've got a couple. They played DePaul, which is like a free space on the college basketball board at the moment, before they play Memphis and Houston. So Texas A&M, Buzz is challenging them to start the year.
Yeah, for sure.
The last one to chat about here in the ACC SEC Challenge, our team, the Auburn Tigers, Bruce Pearl, playing against Virginia Tech. For some reason, KenPom has this. He does like a thrill score ranking. It's the 10th most exciting game today, behind games like Georgia, Florida State, Richmond, Wichita State, Dayton, SMU. We love mid-major college basketball, but this is a good game between Virginia Tech and Auburn. Virginia Tech made the final of that Orlando tournament before getting waxed by FAU. They beat Iowa State, who's solid. They beat Boise State, who's okay. And then you've got Auburn, who we've been really high on. Their only losses to Baylor, but since then, they haven't played a top 100 KenPom team. Their best win is against the Bonnies, which is the one we saw in person, and I don't think the Bonnies were anything special. The line here is Auburn -8.5, Virginia Tech +9, over under of 150. Thoughts on this battle, home game for Auburn there at the Neville Arena?
If we think Auburn's as good as we think they are, I think you got to lay the points here. I mean, that is one of the toughest arenas to play at in the country. It's going to be absolutely rocking. Auburn fans coming off maybe the most devastating Iron Bowl loss of all time. So they're definitely squarely ready for basketball season. Lay them with Auburn tonight.
Yep. I'm taking the Auburn minus 8.5. Number 2 in the country in 3-point percentage defense for Auburn. Virginia Tech shoots a lot of threes. They kind of live and die by it. They're Hunter Couture. This dude just launches threes.
He gets them up.
He has never seen a 3-point attempt that he didn't like. How many has he already shot this year? 56 threes already through 7 games for Hunter Couture. Shut him down. Sean Padula, and I like this Virginia Tech team. I was 2 for 2 betting them against the spread down in Orlando. Sean Padula is a fantastic point guard, but Aiden Holloway, to me, like we've said many times, is one of the best young guards in the country. You cancel out Sean Padula. You've got the athleticism across the board to shut down some of these other Virginia Tech players. And then also, Virginia Tech just played 3 grueling games down there in Orlando. For them to have to come back just 3 days later after playing FAU to come play Auburn, who's just been waxing random teams, add in the home court advantage and give me the Tigers tonight minus 8.5.
Yeah, that's a tough game to get to. I don't know if you remember when our Huskies played Auburn, went down there, got smacked. The bus caught on fire after the game.
Yep.
Yeah, Auburn, man, it's one of the toughest places to play in the country, for real.
Yep. Yeah, so Auburn, they're third in the country in assists per field goal. Let's get the ball flowing tonight. Let's get Aiden Holloway.
Get it moving around.
Threes. Yep. So give me Bruce Pearl tonight. Give me the Tigers minus 8.5. And then one final game. We touched on it a little bit earlier. This comes outside the SEC ACC Challenge, one of our big Pac-12 brethren for at least another few months. The Colorado Buffaloes. They're traveling to Colorado State to play at Moby Arena against the Rams. 9:00 tonight on CBS Sports Network. An interesting game. I'm going to take the under here. It's 149.5. I think the line is Colorado +3, Colorado State -2.5. The over/under is 149.5. And what I'm looking at here is, Colorado State's offense is great. They're third in the country in effective field goal percentage. They play a fast style on offense. So does Colorado. But Colorado State is 5th in the country in assists per field goals made. Colorado is 3rd in the flip side of that. So they don't let anybody score by passing the ball. They want to make you play in isolation. So I think you just look at Colorado State on the offensive end, Colorado on the defensive end, kind of get this clash of styles that I think is going to muck up a little bit the Colorado State offense. I still think Colorado State's going to play fine. I think they would be my pick maybe to win the game, but they also don't offensive rebound at all. Colorado State's almost last in the country in offensive rebound. So if you can muck them up a little bit, get them a little bit off of their flow, they're not going to be crashing the board and rebounding. So I think that slows them down on that end. And then on the Colorado side of the court, they kind of live and die, or like they're a great 3-point shooting team, Colorado is, but they don't shoot a lot of them. They're 7th in the country in 3-point percentage, but they're 303rd overall. This is going to be a hotly contested interstate battle. Colorado State riding the high of that Creighton win. Colorado turns it over a lot too, so you lose some offensive firepower there. I'm going to take the under in this one, despite the kind of flashy offensive numbers for Colorado State.
Yeah, I like that. Styles make fights. I like the under. Also, it just has that feel like, when you have the big game and there's all the hype, and then it's like 6-2 at the first media, and then it's like 11-5 at the second one. Like, it just kind of feels like that type of game.
Yeah, it's one of those where the under could be decided in the first 4 minutes. Like, it's either I'm going to flip over because there's no way I remember that this game starts at 9:00 on CBS because I'm going to be watching North Carolina, Tennessee, and I'll be like, oh, shoot, the game started. And you're going to click the button to flip it over, and you will know instantly whether the under is. It's either going to be like 27-22, like 10 minutes into the game, or it's going to be 8-4.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to know pretty quickly on this one if it's going to.
I definitely agree.
But from what it means for these teams going forward, a pretty interesting game because we've got 34 Colorado, 27 Colorado State. Colorado State picks that one up over Creighton. Colorado State's going to play the Huskies in Vegas after this game. The Huskies took care of business last night. They're up to 59 in Ken Palm. Do we have I know I called for the firing of Hopkins at halftime of the Nevada game. I'm not going to rescind that at this point. I don't quite have a reason to. Can we get a quick status check on your sense of the Huskies?
It sucks that we lost to San Diego State. So we've lost to 2 tournament teams. This Colorado State game is a must win because if we don't get this one, the only other quad 1 opportunity in non-con is Gonzaga. And we're not going to win that game. So, I hope we do, but there's no chance we win it. So then you get into Pac-12 conference play and there's not like a ton of quad 1 opportunities. this Colorado State game's a must win. If we drop this one, I am officially not watching until the Gonzaga game. My thing though is we need money to pay DeBoer. So like if it's buyout Hop or pay DeBoer, like I'm okay with heading to the NIT, heading to the CBI if we can keep DeBoer.
I agree with that. I'm not watching until the Colorado State game. I didn't watch last night. I'm not going to watch again. I'll tune in. I actually didn't watch the San Diego State game either because I had so little confidence in the team. And then I did turn it on for overtime, and then I didn't see a score point the rest of the game. So I might be the problem. Why is it that guys come to Washington and they can't shoot anymore? Moses Wood has been a fantastic 3-point shooter. He shot 44% 2 straight years at Portland. And now he's 11 for 41. Washington, once again, 300th in the country in 3-point percentage. Why does this happen?
If I had $1 for every shooter that UW brings in who can't shoot, like I think part of it is that we don't really run offense. So the shots that you do get aren't really in rhythm, and they're not shots that you practice coming out of sets. It's just like ones where you find yourself open and you jack it up. It's so infuriating. Like we have not had a knockdown shooter. David Crisp is our last knockdown
one year
shooter.
Of David Crisp, yeah.
Like the David Crisp year. That's our last year having a knockdown shooter. Yeah, the Moses Wood thing is just so frustrating. Like I'm still gonna keep hoping him because he was so pure at Portland, but 11 for 44, like you said, hasn't been there to this point.
Indeed. But yeah, so summary for my bets tonight. I'm taking North Carolina -1.5. I'm taking Duke -4.5 wearing the funeral uniforms. Hopefully that works. Auburn -8.5. This is if Auburn screws me on this one, I'm going to be downgrading them a fair amount. This is I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
A prove it game, team, if you will.
100%. Yep. And then the under, Colorado versus Colorado State, 149.5. So those are my 4 bets tonight. We're 19-10, had our first not profitable day of the season yesterday, but we're going to bounce back hopefully tonight in the ACC SEC Challenge. Hunter, we'll be back on Friday for a absolute barn burner of a matchup. UConn at Kansas on Friday. Then the Dogs are going to, or the Husky Oregon game, we'll talk about that. Clear your calendars. We'll be going live on Friday. Hunter, I'll talk to you then.
Can't wait. Let's do it.